Fizeste com som? Fizeste com som?
Approach on how to design successful gamification. Furthermore, Oliveira et al. adds that it is not known what are the best design solutions for tailored gamification of educational systems and highlights the need to develop personalized gamification frameworks according to user preferences, needs, and goals. Probably because gamification design requires a creative balance between technical and artistic solutions combined with fun design. So I am not going to spend a lot of time describing the state of the art. I am just going to end with a systematic literature review that Oliveira did in 2022, this year. So where they analyzed the effects of personalized gamification in students' learning. They identified that most systems are personalized using only the gamer types, and the results do not demonstrate their effectiveness because they lack comparison validation tests between tailored versus non-tailored systems. Our method procedure for designing the questionnaire, we did brainstorming focus groups. One performed with a sample of teachers who helped us choose educational rewards for the students, and another similar focus groups with game developers. Choose educational rewards for the students, and another similar focus groups with game developers that helped us choose key elements of game design associated with
But like, one question, like,
old. So they were on the ninth grade of the Portuguese education system. And the third question, Portuguese students answer that they feel more invested in studying when the content is more interactive than theoretical. Most Portuguese students would be interested in a game directly connected to the school curriculum. A percentage of 65% of students feel positive about using technological devices in the learning process. Most students feel that healthy competition increases the potential of students. The most liked type of mobile devices games were, starting by order of preference, action, arcade, adventure, Clash Royale, Call of Duty, mystery, strategy, role-play, chess, card games, builders.
Okay. Well, good morning. It's a time for start with session number 4 with 4 presentations, the singularity of the numbers. And we'll start with the first presentation by Portugal. It's Teresa Vieira. It's online in this moment. And it's from Instituto Superior da Maia, near Porto. And your presentation is preference of students in game elements for implementation in game field learning, a survey report. We go start with the videos first, and after we have time for questions.
Preferences of student in game elements for implementation in gamified learning, a survey report. How to capture students' attention and keep them engaged and motivated in learning. Traditional teaching and learning methods are beginning to seem outdated among generations of students increasingly captivated by digital technologies and games. The use of gamification in education aims to motivate students for the tedious task of learning and keep them engaged in the long term to improve their outcomes. The term gamification is commonly defined as the use of game design elements in non-game contexts. Or simply put by Hammarskjöld, gamification is about how to add a bit of fun to laborious and tedious tasks. So what is the project Maximus about? The Maximus project aims at designing, developing, and testing a digital, customizable, and interactive motivation system to engage students in learning and at the same time facilitate the learners' participation, their self-development while mastering transversal skills, deep thinking, and creative expression. The system will include game-like elements to inspire game-like reactions and engagement among students. For example, teachers can create classroom activities and reward students with in-game virtual rewards and currency to unlock avatar parts that they can customize. The virtual currency also allows the student to enter an online store to buy further in-game items and featured cards that earn them experience points. The objective is to make the Maximus system available to teachers and students through an application for mobile phones, tablets, and PCs. So, how to design effective gamification? The implementation of gamified learning systems, student results do not always show improvement because the use of gamification is not a bulletproof solution guarantee of achieving better results. Specifically, poorly designed gamification approaches, for example, limited to the PBL triad, points, badges, and leaderboards, or limited to other primary game features without proper instructional context and fun design will hardly obtain the desired positive results. Some studies refer to the importance of designing personalized gamification systems according to user preferences and profile. So we interviewed a group of students representing the target audience of the Maximus system to find out what their preferences are regarding game elements to help us implement them in the design of Maximus' customized gamified system. The main contributions of this paper survey are the students' preferences in terms of types of games, animations, sources of motivation, and rewards to help us tailor Maximus' gamification system. Currently, there are a few methodologies for general gamification design in the current state of the art. For example, the gamification model canvas framework by Flavio Escrivano, or the 60 framework proposed by Kevin Verbach and Dan Hunter, or the Octalysis framework by Yu-Kai Chu for gamification behavioral design, among many others. Despite some common points among these and other frameworks, the truth is that there is not a single standardized approach on how to design successful gamification. Furthermore, Oliveira et al. Adds that it is not known what are the best design solutions for tailored gamification of educational systems and highlights the need to develop personalized gamification frameworks according to user preferences, needs, and goals. Probably because gamification design requires a creative balance between technical and artistic solutions combined with fun design. So I am not going to spend a lot of time describing the state of the art. I am just going to end with a systematic literature review that Oliveira did in 2022, this year. So where they analyzed the effects of personalized gamification in students' learning. They identified that most systems are personalized using only the gamer types, and the results do not demonstrate their effectiveness because they lack comparison validation tests between tailored versus non-tailored systems. Our method procedure for designing the questionnaire, we did brainstorming focus groups, one performed with a sample of teachers who helped us choose educational rewards for the students, and another similar focus groups with game developers that helped us choose key elements of game design associated with higher levels of engagement. The information collected from these focus groups was used to create the first draft of the questionnaire used in this research. We obtained informed consent from the legal tutors of the children to allow them to participate in the research. The results of the questionnaire were then processed and analyzed through SPSS, statistical analysis for descriptive analysis. So, let's jump into the results. I am not going to read all the questions, but only the replies. So the first question asked was what was the student's school? All participants are from Instituto Superior da Maia. The second question asked for the student's age. So the average age of the respondents was 14 years old. So they were on the 9th grade of the Portuguese education system. And the third question, Portuguese students answer that they feel more invested in studying when the content is more interactive than theoretical. Most Portuguese students would be interested in a game directly connected to the school curriculum. A percentage of 65% of students feel positive about using technological devices in the learning process. Most students feel that healthy competition increases the potential of students. The most liked type of mobile devices games were, starting by order of preference, action, arcade, adventure, Clash Royale, Call of Duty, mystery, strategy, roleplay, chess, card games, builders, simulators, Minecraft, quiz, Roblox, shoot 'em up. Most students prefer games with personalized avatars. The preferred learning media of our students are digital posters, practical games, infographics, podcasts, articles, video, and finally, digital books. The preferred in-game animations of our students are, we grouped their answers, human-like animations, colorful animations, high-quality scenes, Fortnite, specifically their dances, animals, graphs, sounds, and animations connected with character development or evolution, or story development, for example, Howard's Mystery and Landscapes. The favorite sources of motivation of our students are Animal Company, games, namely games related to school academic content, rewards, rankings, according with mastery, objective list connected to achievements, more video material in classes, interactivity, and music. A percentage of 87% of students think that getting rewarded in a logic of in-game currency is a good concept to use in a motivational system. Inversely, 3 students suggested that tangible rewards that could be used in stores, hotels, spas, etc., and also getting access to mini-games. Almost 40% of Portuguese students report that they are not allowed to use technological devices during classes, which might be a relevant barrier for implementation of a gamification system that relies heavily on the use of technological devices. Almost 70% of students would like to see how their colleagues are doing using rankings. Portuguese students prefer to have more competitive group work in classes. Portuguese students prefer to choose their work group members. A big percentage of students stated their availability to do extra classwork to get rewards. Most students would prefer to do additional work in school to get exam benefits. Almost all of students answer that they prefer tasks to be diverse instead of repetitive. Our students' preferred rewarding benefits are the ability to use a phone during the day in school, possibility of canceling one grade, having a free lesson during the day, possibility of retaking the exam, having longer breaks, having an option to ask the teacher for answer, ignoring questions on an exam. Other rewards that could motivate our students to do extra work are don't have to do written tests, do a paper instead a test or exam, extra points on the final score of the test, material rewards like food, money, interactive boards in classrooms, vouchers, having more free time, doing only one test in a week, public acknowledgement for their work, doing work or activities that might give them information about careers and jobs. So, students, from the data, we can conclude that we believe that the gamification and Maximus motivational system proposals in their majority are going to be very well accepted by Portuguese students. This belief is based on their preference for more interactive and competitive methods of teaching and learning, as well for the use of technological devices in school and classrooms. Additionally, they also have a very positive and enthusiastic view about gamification and its main elements like avatars, in-game designs, and animations, reinforced by the large number of suggestions they offered behind the choices that they had in the questionnaire items. So let's take a sneak peek into the current status of Maximus gamified system.
This is Cosmic Realms. It's a second layer tool for our gamification system. The purpose of this tool, or this game, is to allow students to build up their own character and present them to their peers. In order to do that, they need to collect parts and colors so that they can build their own unique avatar. To get these parts and colors, students need to collect cards and assemble them into sets. When completing a set, the student gets its reward, which is mainly experience, which I will talk in a minute, and some parts. Most of these sets are linked to school subjects. Others are connected with cultural events or personalities. So the student is encouraged to gather all these sets, and when they have a set ready, they can claim their reward. In order to complete the sets, they need to collect cards, and they can buy cards directly using the store. But the cheapest way to get more cards is to buy the treasure chests. We call them crates. These crates can only be opened by using the two main currencies that we have. We have the yellow one, which is called the key, and we have the green one, which is called the quid. The yellow one is mainly obtained from outside the game, so it results on completing tasks that teachers give to the students, while the green currency is mainly earned within the game. If the student doesn't complete tasks outside of the game, the student will not be able to open crates, and therefore progress is severely hindered. So getting keys requires an external action, while getting quids, it's more like something you do in the game. To earn quids, you can, for instance, buy them directly using keys. You have daily free quids, so you can accumulate them along each day and have some ready to open a crate or to buy cards directly. Or you can burn your duplicate cards that you may get while opening crates. In parallel, the game also offers you a set of missions, we call them achievements, and you have several tasks to do. When you achieve them, you get some rewards. You can get quiz, you can get experience, and you can get also, in some cases, you can get keys. Speaking on experience is linked to a part that we call journey. The journey is mainly a ladder of progress that allows the students to accumulate or to spend their experience trading them for rewards. They can get quiz, they can get keys from time to time, and they can get parts. So there is two ways to get parts, either by completing sets where you get thematic parts, or you can have some generic parts but also very useful by moving up the ladder of experience. So this is the economy of Cosmic Realms. This is
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's a very interesting presentation, Teresa Vieira. I open the time for questions. Teresa, make a question. And first, in the group of the students, it's just Portuguese students, or you have students of the other continents?
Can you hear me correctly?
Yeah.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And the other question is, you have in this group of students, you have a difference of the sex, the female, male. You are attention for this, or it's not relevant for your presentation?
Okay, we did not separated female versus male replies, and yes, we interviewed Portuguese students, but we also our partners also made a similar survey, but I did not have access to the data. I'm sorry. We should also have included, but we used the data that we had. But for the implementation of Maximus reward system, we used all the data collected from European partners, Slovakia, Greece, Spain, etc.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Some other questions? Thank you, Teresa, for your first presentation. This forum of the ArtsIT, and you go ask for another presentation. It's okay. It's possible. Yeah. Next. Okay. Okay. The next presentation is from Sweden. It's Nicholas Umbo, Mid Sweden University, partner of computer and system science. You go view a video, and after I suppose it's possible questions online. Thank you.
Presentation of the conference paper Design Factors for an Educational Game Where Girls and Boys Play Together to Learn Fundamental Programming by Peter Moselius and me, Niklas Humle. We are both from the Department of Computer and System Science at Mid Sweden University. Introduction. Several research studies have reported on the labor market's increased need for professionals with programming skills. Programming courses are an important but also challenging part of the future computer expert education process. To meet the demands on the labor market and society, a global trend is to integrate programming in elementary school. With this younger learner group, there is also a need for new didactic methods, curriculum development, and a more joyful learning process. An old concept of motivation that has got a digital renaissance during the last decades is game-based learning. Game-based learning has also been used frequently with promising results in science, technology, engineering and mathematics, that is STEM, and in programming education. Despite the progress in inclusive game design, girls and women have not embraced video games to the same extent as boys and men. Research studies have also reported that certain types of games are more appealing to girls than others. The research gap that the authors try to address in this study is twofold. Firstly, to investigate which particular game details that make girls welcome to a game, and also to identify the details that have the opposite effect. Secondly, it is interesting for a future game design to get the elementary school students' perception on design factors for an educational game on computer programming. The aim of this study is to collect requirements for design and educational games on programming where girls and boys find it joyful to play together. The first research question: which specific design factors are important for a girl-inclusive game design? The second research question: what are elementary school students' perceptions of important design factors for an educational game on computer programming? Development. The game development tool RPG Playground was used to design and develop an educational game prototype. RPG Playground is a free game development tool enabling game developers to create web-based role-playing games. The game Escape with Python was developed with the idea of creating a digital escape room that students would find joyful and motivating. Escape with Python was developed with a clear focus on fundamental programming in the Python programming language. Game content, that is the challenges in the escape rooms, was constructed with a deliberate close alignment to the programming content in a syllabus framework for elementary school that was created and distributed by the Swedish National Agency for Education. 5 fundamental programming concepts were chosen from the syllabus framework to constitute the basis for the problem solving in the escape rooms. The chosen concepts were variables, sequences, conditions, iterations, and functions. Method. This study was inspired by the design science idea that has been described as a problem-solving paradigm that seeks to innovate ideas, practices, and artifacts. A design science approach by Johannesson and Perjons was used to structure this study in 5 discrete but interrelated steps. 1. To explicate the problem. 2. Defining the requirements. 3. The design and development of an artifact. 4. Demonstrating the artifact. And 5. Evaluating the artifact. Data collection and data analysis. Data were gathered in a combination of a scoping literature review and through a questionnaire that was answered by elementary school students that had tested the Escape with Python game. The scoping review strived to synthesize research results to gather requirements for a specific target group as a foundation for future research. The main search engine to identify research papers of interest was Google Scholar. Search strings were combined with the use of Boolean operators or and, based on the main keywords, that is, games, inclusive, design, girls, and women. Backward and forward searches were used to identify seminal research publications that have a potential to contribute to answering the research question. After critical rereading of results sets, 24 research publications between 1994 and 2022 were selected for further thematic analysis. Regarding the questionnaire, the game prototype for Escape with Python was demonstrated and evaluated by 32 elementary school students during the autumn semester of 2021 and the spring semester of 2022. 28 were from grade 9, 2 students from grade 8, and 1 student from grade 7, and 1 student did not specify which grade. Regarding the gender distribution, there were 18 boys, 11 girls, and 3 students did not want to specify gender. Data were collected by a questionnaire containing a combination of closed-ended and open-ended questions. Regarding the analysis, both data sources were thematically analyzed, guided by the 6-phase process outlined by Brown and Clark. The results from the 2 different data sources are first presented separately and finally compared and merged under a separate section. The scoping review. 5 main themes were identified in the analysis of the literature search. The first 4 themes are considered important design concepts for a girl-inclusive game design, in contrast to the last theme that shows potential problems with a too girl-specific game design that might exclude boys. Creativity and customization. The first found theme was that girls have expressed a more positive preference for games that encourage creativity, where creativity could feature for modifying game characters and game elements. An example of a game where customization and creativity are larger parts than the actual gameplay is the Sims game series. Exploration without violence. An identified difference is that boys are more attracted to games with combat and violence, while girls prefer non-violent competition. The difference has also been reported in studies on game creation. Furthermore, studies have reported that girls want a more explorative gameplay with a rich narrative, diverse activities and characters, to be combined with social interaction. Collaborative interaction. The studies on children creating games also points out that boys to a higher degree like to build competition and combat games, while girls were more interested to build games with social interaction. Several other studies have pointed out that girls in general want to play games with social interaction related to a rich narrative with sophisticated game characters. Character diversity. Previous research highlights that girls prefer games with both male and female characters, which also is reflected in games design where girls more often creates both male and female game characters. Girls also seem to like non-gender specific characters in realistic settings if compared to boys. Moreover, it has been claimed that personalization could motivate girls to see themselves as the role models. Girl-specific game design. Another approach to address the challenges with getting more girls and women into games and game design is through gender-specific design and to create a so-called virtuous cycle. Girls and women might be more interested in playing and creating games if there would be more games that appeal to girls and women. However, games that specifically appeal to women and girls alone will not necessarily result in more female game designers. Moreover, it may be advised to offer both girls and boys the opportunity to explore areas that they normally would not be drawn towards. It also seems possible that girls could appreciate active gameplay and that boys can enjoy a more creative gameplay. The questionnaire. The answers to the open-ended questions contained many interesting perceptions about the game and also constructive suggestions for improvements. Results from the thematic analysis are presented in 4 categories. Game mechanics and customization. Answers indicate that students liked the retro feel of the game and that it resembled other games that they had played earlier. On the other hand, there were more critical comments as well, and students asked for an overall design improvement. As discussed before in other studies on educational games, it is hard for projects in academia to compete with commercial AAA games regarding graphics. Finally, it was suggested by students that every player should be able to customize their game characters and take control over how they were visually represented in the game. Game mechanics and customization. The result from the analysis also showed that many students perceived the gameplay as unclear and that the gameplay lacked consistency. On the other hand, some students wrote that the game was easy to play and understand. These variation could probably be explained by students' previous gaming habits and to which extent they have played different types of games. Like the comments on customization in the previous section, some students suggested that the gameplay should have more freedom and choices. For example, players should be able to explore the game world more freely and also with features for writing code in the game instead of selecting pre-written code. Game content. As for many other game analyses, results show that players have strong variations in their preference of the level of difficulty. The most probable explanation to this is the player's prior experience of programming, which have variations in the testing group. Moreover, some students suggested that the game could be made more exciting by adding a life system, which would inform about the number of chances that the player have for solving a problem. Learning and motivation. One of the most positive findings was that students expressed that they have found the game engaging and that they had, at the same time, had learned something. There were other positive comments on that the game content was related to school content and that they saw the game as useful. Regarding motivation, they mentioned that they wanted to learn more about programming and how to create their own games. This touches upon other aspects of game-based learning for programming education. Learning to program by building games as a complement to learning by playing. To get everyone on board in an average elementary school class, the idea must be of lowering the threshold with more of scaffolding in the initial levels. Comparing and merging the results. The themes found in the literature study can be found in the upper part of the left circle in figure 2, and the themes found in the game evaluation have been placed in the upper part of the right circle. The intersection of the two circles showed the themes that occurred in both the studies. Combined, these themes create a framework for girl-inclusive educational game design with the idea of games with wide walls, high ceiling, and a low threshold. However, in the case of educational games and programming, the content is increasingly challenging and the gameplay must not necessarily increase simultaneously. For players without earlier programming and gaming skills, a too high level of challenge could lead away from the flow channel. In the genre of educational games and programming, a gentle start or a low threshold seems preferable. Conclusion. The accumulation of results from two separate studies with separate research questions would merge into the framework depicted in Figure 2. A thoughtful consideration of the found factors could lead the idea of a girl-inclusive educational game design. In this framework, all factors are equally weighted, but the factors found in both studies might be the most neglected ones. To implement customization in all aspects would be complex, but the identified request for character diversity and creative features for character customization seems relatively easy to implement. Adding features for customization could definitely support the ideas of wide walls and high ceilings in the game. Limitations and future research. As noted earlier, the framework for girl-inclusive educational game design that has been presented in this study builds on previous studies by the authors that have been merged. With that said, more research is needed to determine if the design factors that have been identified in this study encourage girls and boys to play and learn together. This would be an interesting next step of research, developing and evaluating a new and updated game with a more carefully planned out design based on the design factors of this study. Future research should also incorporate a larger group of student testers with different genders and backgrounds, preferably in a mixed methods approach. Thank you for listening to this presentation on design factors for an educational game where girls and boys play together to learn fundamental programming. If you have any questions or comments, please don't hesitate to contact either me or Peter Musilius. Thank you.
Thank you, Nicholas. It's time for questions. If you have questions in the room. Yes.
Hey, thanks for this, really interesting. I'll be speaking on a panel later and I'll use some of your findings. That's really nicely what I'm going to say. But you speak about educational games to teach programming. My question is, what if the focus was a little bit broader, or perhaps looking at other parts of the game development process, such as art or design? Do you think it would be easier to get more interest from girls, as my perception is that programming is a very, very male-coded discipline? Thanks.
Thank you for that. You hear me all right? Do you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, great. No, thank you for that's an excellent question. So if I understand it correctly, would girls be more motivated by this game if they were on a wider concept than programming, for example, design and stuff like that? Did I understand that question correctly?
Yes.
Oh yeah. Well, yeah, you're probably right. I mean, like, I think so. But I mean, like, the idea with this game is mainly focusing on like the problems we have on both in general, getting more people to become programmers and also finishing the programming education that has started, and also getting more girls to do it. So I think that is probably why we did go for that. But on the question, will they be more motivated? Yeah, probably. If we go by what the scoping review found, that seems to indicate that girls seems to be more motivated by creative gameplay and stuff like that. So yeah, that would probably be right. So I don't know. Does that answer your question?
Yes, that's. I take it that we agree that that's an interesting opportunity going forward.
Yeah, but I think that it would probably be interesting. Like, could and I think this is something that we will develop further in the next iteration of this game. So is it possible to still focus on programming, like the programming concepts, and still make it feel like more creative and more artful, maybe? I think this is possible. So this is something that we will further develop in the next iteration of the game, hopefully. Yeah. So, but I think it's an excellent question, and I think you're totally right about it. Yeah. So that and it's the challenge.
Okay. No more questions. Just very simple questions. Elementary students. It's what age of the elementary school students in Sweden?
One more time. What did you say?
What's the age of the elementary?
Oh yeah.
Student?
Okay, the age. So yeah, so it's grade 7 to grade 9. So that would be around age 12, 13, 14, I think, something like that.
Okay.
Yeah. So 12, 13, 14 years old. Yeah.
Oh, it's not more questions. Thank you very much for your
thank you.
presentation. Bye. Thank you. The next presentation, it's from India. It's a recreation gaming experience, special augmented reality. And the presentation it's made by Vibhuti Sagar. I suppose you have first a video, and after we have a place for a moment for the questions.
Hi everyone, I am Vibhuti Sagar and I am going to present my work on the paper titled Recreating Gaming Experience Through Spatial Augmented Reality. The presentation will start with the introduction and the aim of the work, background, the design and development of the games with their iterations, execution, results, and finally the conclusion and future scope. In this online era, we are connecting virtually but losing out on each other's physical presence. The aim of this work is to create an experience for people to connect with each other in a physical space. The project is named as Connect. Connect is a series of nostalgic games to be played in a spatially augmented environment. It involves the intersection of projection mapping, game design, and experiential design. The experience should inculcate feel-good emotions and focus on enhancing socialization and collaboration. These three broad domains are connected as shown to come up with a new experience. Connect inculcates feel-good emotions by recreating the nostalgic games extensively played during the 90s. These games were simple and widely played by people of all age groups. The aim of enhancing socialization is achieved by making these games as multiplayer. Instead of competitive gaming, the games are made as cooperative where the players come together to achieve a common target. The physical space provides an open space for interaction and collaboration, which distinguishes it from the usual experience of playing in front of a screen. Projection mapping allows the game to scale up as much as possible and project in different places, including 3D objects. These games are projected in the cave, and people's responses are recorded after the experience. The background study involves understanding spatial augmented reality, designing for social places, and understanding game design. A special type of augmented reality technology, where the combination of virtual and real objects is produced by projecting virtual content onto real objects using projection mapping, is called spatial augmented reality. These are some of the explorations tried while coming up with the experience. Spatial augmented reality augments virtuality on real objects without using any special displays such as monitors, handheld devices, or head-mounted setup. Since the displays are separated from the users, the projection can be scaled up and allow many people to experience together. Projection mapping finds its applications in areas like spreading awareness about various causes using the huge canvases, giving life to benign buildings, entertainment industry, marketing, data visualization, and interactive projection mapping. The concept of experiential design is explored for understanding the type of physical space appropriate to create the experience. Experiential design is designing experiences for people in physical spaces. The verticals of experiential design include exhibition design, environmental graphics, entertainment, placemaking, and marketing. Techniques such as video installations, virtual reality, augmented reality, video mapping, holographic installations, interaction design, and immersive environments are used to create experiential design. To understand the social aspects, socio-technical design is explored, which is the application of community requirements to people, software, and hardware. Socio-technical design says that technology that facilitates social interactions should also meet social demands. The vision of human-computer interaction has also moved from just worrying about the productivity of users to being concerned with the wider effects of systems on user experiences, including fun, pleasure, immersion, and so on. HCI's initial focus was on individual and general user behavior, which expanded to include social and organizational computing for the widest possible spectrum of human experiences and activities. The study of game design made the choice of games to be recreated very clear. The application of typical elements of game playing is called gamification. Studies show that an everyday activity can be transformed into a game, and a person is much more apt to remember something if they have moved their body while doing it. People ask for some variation on a game that they've seen or played or seen their kids play. A good game idea is one which is exciting for the developer, possible and reasonable to execute, has a decent audience size, and is exciting for the players. A game should easily communicate the information, find the perfect ground between familiar and original, should have appealing fantasy and the capability to evoke emotions. To come up with the game idea, one should start with something familiar. It could be an inspiration from real life, game genre, popular genre, board game, game mechanic, and story. Then additions can be done to turn it into something new and original. These points were kept in mind while recreating the games. 2 games were chosen for recreation, Snake and Pac-Man. The first game selected to recreate was the classic Snake, which ushered a new era of mobile gaming. The simple gameplay attracted the attention of a huge audience. The 90s generation grew up playing the game, attaching a certain nostalgia to it. By including projection mapping in different spaces, a new dimension and form of the game with a different immersion level is explored. Simple graphics were used for the first iteration, Unity was used as a platform to develop the game, and C# was used as the scripting language to code the game. Scripts were added to move the snake using arrow keys, incrementation of snake, food spawning randomly, teleporters to be able to move the snake from one to the other side of the screen, and score at the top of the screen. The game would be over if the snake collided with the walls or with itself. The game layout was then created according to the box to be projected on. The layout was in the shape of an open net of a cuboid. The video feed was sent to the mapping software Touch Designer. The corner points were adjusted according to the faces of the 3D object while viewing the live projection. The game could be played through the keyboard or joystick. Cooperative games are a type of play or sport in which participants cooperate to accomplish a shared goal. A co-op game aims to place more focus on the social components of play or sport while reducing the emphasis on competitiveness. The cooperative nature of the games is intended to highlight Connect's emphasis on collaboration and sociability. Another snake and more fruits were added. The gameplay included 3 more ways to make the game as co-op. Number 1. Combined scores of the 2 snakes was displayed instead of individual scores. Number 2. The game would be over even when one snake collided with the other snake, therefore not allowing the snakes to cross each other. Number 3. The game would be over for both the players even when one player died. In the next iteration, the sprites were replaced with new graphics, sound effects and animation were added. Errors were eradicated and the latency was removed. The game was played on a temporary setup. Verbal feedback gave a very promising and positive response towards further development and improvement. The next and final iteration is made for the cave, with the layout adhering to the cave dimensions. The second game selected for recreation was Pac-Man. Pac-Man became a huge attraction when it was released. The arcade version was followed by many different versions. It also has a very nostalgic appeal to it since it was loved by people of all ages across the world. Therefore, it was chosen for recreation to see the effect of this iconic game with a new immersion level. The layout was created for Pac-Man. Different sprites for the Pac-Man, ghosts, pellets and teleporter were created keeping the originals in mind. The gameplay was in accordance with the original Pac-Man with the 4 ghosts, Inky, Pinky, Blinky and Clyde. The scripting was done for the Pac-Man movement, note system for the layout, warping the teleporters, Pac-Man animation, pellet seating, scoreboard, each ghost's movement, ghost modes, frighten, chase and scatter, power pellets, ghost animation and sound effects. The game was played for the initial setting. In the next iteration, another Pac-Man was added along with a new set of ghosts to follow this Pac-Man. The game board size was changed according to the cave. After several rounds of iterations and testing, the scripting of the final game was completed. Cave is used for the final execution as more than one user can stay in the environment at the same time, allowing for interaction and collaboration among the people. People played both the games in the cave. The players were seen talking and laughing with each other while playing. Initially, the players who did not remember Pac-Man took some time to understand its gameplay, but after a few turns, they became accustomed to it and were seen playing without any hassle. The players were seen moving around in the game. After some time, they started coordinating the use of power pellets in Pac-Man. They also coordinated which side of the screen to take up in both Snake and Pac-Man. Sometimes they divided which fruits to eat in Snake. The players wanted to create a new high score. The people who were not playing were seen looking at the game of other people. The players mentioned feeling immersed and nostalgic while playing. They were eagerly waiting for their turn to play. Let's see a glimpse of the experience.
more engaging than the arcade box.
As a child, when I used to play with my brother and we used to fight all the time. But she played the part really well.
Because you get to go around and be like, oh my god, no. And then
I wasn't expecting it, but it's it's really intense.
Rather than me dying, she kept dying, but it was fun. We had a lot of fun. It was a great game.
Connect is a series of nostalgic games which we used to play as kids in a spatially augmented environment. The aim of Connect is to create an experience where people can come together and connect with each other in a physical space. It is created with the intersection of game design, projection mapping, and experiential design. So we live in an online era where sometimes we lose out on each other's physical presence. The scope of this project is to convert any physical space, like a room or a building, into a functioning game where people can come together and play, instead of just sitting in front of a screen. Around 51 people played the games and filled a post-experience questionnaire. The people were faculty, staff, guests and students of Indian Institute of Technology, Hyderabad. The average age of the people was 23.5 years. Some statements were given in the questionnaire based on the experience with the Likert scale, where 1 stood for strongly disagree and 5 stood for strongly agree. The questions were conceived based on the assumptions made while creating the experience. The statements and their average ratings by the participants are given. The experience gave me a nostalgic feeling, 4.37. I felt immersed in the gaming world while playing, 4.62. I felt good after playing the games, 4.72. My teammate and I cooperated while playing, 4.47. I found myself socializing with my teammate while playing, 4.45. While other people were playing, I was looking at the gameplay, 4.37. When I was not playing, I was talking to the other people who were not playing either, 3.66. A rating of less than 4 was received when asked about socializing with people while not playing. This could have been because the people who were experiencing did not come at the same time. Rather, the crowd was sometimes too dense and other times too scarce. Due to this, sometimes there were no people to socialize while not playing the games. This anomaly can be cleared by testing the experience in an actual social gathering. Overall, the responses by the participants were very encouraging and positive. Other than this, feedback and suggestions to improve the experience were also mentioned by the people, both verbally and in the post-experience survey. This included experimenting and adding more than 2 players to play. Some surprise elements could be added, like the players exchanging controls when they crossed each other. Some sort of competition between the players could also be tried instead of collaboration. The sound and the graphics could be experimented with. People wanted to play more games, including 3D games. Someone mentioned that the corners felt hard to see and the concave screens could be used. Negative feedback was given by very few participants who felt that the music was too loud and felt a headache after playing for some time. The target of feel-good emotions, socialization and collaboration were very well achieved. The post-experience questionnaire confirmed the same along with written and verbal feedback. Several suggestions were also given by people to include certain elements in the games which might enhance the experience even further. Future scope includes testing the experience in an actual physical environment, ideally in a social gathering. The graphics of the currently created games can be modified to give a completely new feel with the same gameplay. Different graphic elements by changing the game board, characters and animation can be experimented with. On top of that, instead of recreating a game, an original site-specific game can be created based on the location. It would improve the relationship between the game and the structure, as the game will not be entwined that perfectly anywhere else, guarding the originality of the game within that space. The games created in such a way should include certain elements in the gameplay that take complete advantage of the site. The number of players can also be increased. Another exploration can be done by removing the need of gaming consoles to play the game and using different interactive methods like hand gestures, head gestures, eye movement, full body movement, and even sound as game controls. These interactions are achieved with the help of various tracking devices. This would involve diving into interactive projection mapping. Overall, Connect got a very positive response from the people and the concept showed a strong potential. The aim of the project was achieved and addressing the future scope would further enhance the experience. Thank you.
Thank you, Vibhuti Sagar. It's a presentation. It's very interesting and the game over, but it's a time for questions. Several questions about this presentation. Well, I know it's a question, but for me it's very interesting. Look, Snake and Pac-Man, that it's a nostalgia games make for 2 dimensions, and you present this in a special augmented reality with a projection with the 3 dimensions. Because this is very interesting. This transport of 2 dimensions to 3 dimensions. I just look if you speak something about this. It's very interesting for me.
Yeah, so I think something that starts initially was with 2 dimension. This can also be taken up with the 3 dimension, as many of the participants told that they would love to explore and play the 3D, the combat games inside that environment, inside that particular space. It's like when we talk about like virtual reality, it's like we are putting people inside a box. But when we are talking about spatial augmented reality, it's like taking the contents out from that box onto the environment around us. So that just creates a new dimension and expands the physical space.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, one question.
Actually, was always trying to simulate, not you say 3-dimensional, but in fact it's a 2-dimensional torus. And Pac-Man was always simulating on the screen a torus because you would get out of the left side and you're on the right side, and that was a simulation of the torus. And what you did was actually you made a real torus on the cube. So actually, you did the real implementation of what Pac-Man always wanted to be. Okay.
I'm sorry, it was not exactly very clear for me.
Oh,
Well, what I was saying is that in fact, what you did with Pac-Man was to implement it as it always wanted to do, because Pac-Man, when you get out of the left, you're right in the original game. Right? So that's torus geometrically. And what you did with Q is that you made a real that you actually go around in a maze. So you didn't have to right.
I think the voice, there are 2 videos which are unmuted, so the voice is echoing from both the sides for me.
Okay, never mind. We're talking about
3-dimensional sound. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Vibhuti Sagar. Thank you.
Thank you.
The last presentation is from University of Algarve, SIAC, the research of this SIAC, and it's from Bruno Silva and Susana Costa. I suppose you have just a video. It's after it's not online, but go look.
Hello, my name is Bruno Mendes da Silva. I'm the Vice Coordinator of SIAC, the Research Center for Arts and Communication of the University of Algarve.
Hello, my name is Susana Costa. I'm a PhD student in Digital Media Art at University of Algarve and Open University.
It is a pleasure to be at this present edition of ArtsIT presenting some initial results of my PhD work hosted by University of Algarve and the Open University and by the Research Center for Arts and Communication. This work, made in collaboration with professors Bruno Mendes da Silva, Miriam Tavares and José Bidarra, focuses on the proliferation of hate speech in games and gaming environments and the effects on children, youth and adolescents. We propose a game installation as a way to prevent and talk about this issue in these young ages, 11 years old to 14 years old. Actually, we live in the era of superinformation, in which messages and communication are instantaneous and massive. The media, and more specifically social networks, are often the main stage of fierce controversies that often degenerate into offenses, insults and hatred. Online hate speech is defined as a public incitement to violence or hatred directed at groups or individuals based on certain characteristics, including race, color, religion, descent, and national or ethnic origin. The contact with this phenomenon occurs in three ways: by exposure, victimization, and aggression, with two major consequences: desensitization and legitimacy of hate. It is a multidisciplinary problem of contemporaneity that can be approached through different disciplines. We can discuss it from the point of view of law, media, education, programming, activism, or literacy. Responses to hate speech have been implemented, especially in social media, by silencing, either through user complaints or through artificial intelligence programs trained to denounce any suspected use of hate speech. This silencing is temporary, but it has been observed that users have begun to search for more private and unregulated spaces like game platforms as Twitch or Discord, where speech is less controlled.
Games and game platforms have a major importance in youth life. Numbers speak for themselves. As it well documented in literature about hate speech, it happens in games and game platforms in two forms: spontaneous, as a reaction to the game or to the defeat, and programmed. One of the most famous cases was the March of Charlottesville in 2007, when the 500 white supremacists walked in this city. They were showing the world the power of Twitch as a tool to organize a racist march, disturbing and causing damage to hundreds of people and even deaths. This raises a problem: the paradox of democracy and democratic societies. How is it possible to balance free speech and other fundamental rights as equality, inclusion, and respect? Previous findings shows, and European recommendation says, that media and information literacy plays a key role in prevention of hate speech, as it includes the development of the technical skills necessary to use digital technologies, as well as the knowledge and skills needed to find, analyze, evaluate, and interpret media texts, create message, and recognize their social and political influence, tackling issues such as the right of freedom of expression, privacy, inclusive citizenship, and civic participation. Networking and promotion actions that increase the creative and multidisciplinary power of gamification can lead to greater awareness with the aim of changing behaviors.
According to these previous findings, our project proposes a game installation named In the Hate Booth to counteract online hate speech. This is the motto for our research. How can interactive installations and digital games contribute to the prevention or mitigation of the impact of hate speech on the identity or development of young people? So, we designed this game installation based on three features: gamification, digital art, and artivism. We based the development of the game installation in complementary methodologies. For one side, we used practice-based research and a narrative approach. We contacted groups of students from 11 to 14 years old to collect their experiences with hate speech. That was the basis of our story and the principle of the game. This installation is designed to be an immersive space isolated by 3 panels and a curtain, which invites the interactor to immerse himself in its luminous environment. Inside the cabin, it is possible to find a 13-inch screen with the announcement that the feed of a web page will be discontinued and the only access will correspond to the post-mortem, granting the documentation of the incident that led to the decision and thanking the fans and regular visitors. The cancellation leads to questions voiced in the comments box. What happened to the authors? Why did they decide to stop writing? When choosing to find out what happened, the interactor will be able to find the archived messages. When reading and decoding them, it will be possible to find the intensification of various types of hate messages among the followers. Our goals are to implement a link between the political agenda and our results, basing our actions in the creation of a community to work with, namely schools and students and teachers. At this point, we are collecting data to validate or refute the hypothesis. Can we use games and digital art to promote independent identity development, inclusion, and active citizenship?
Okay. Well, it's a time for over this session because the Bruno Silva and Susana Costa is not online. It's not possible to make questions. Thank you for this time in this session number 4.
We have started just 3 minutes ago.
Let me see some issues.
Great, you are making them.
Good, good. Dois.
Oh, did you stop? That could be 5 minutes. Sorry, I was having too much fun. So I'm your session chair, and I'm also presenting alongside Eva for this talk of ours up front. And thanks to the gentleman here, we have 2 sound systems going, and fingers across. We're going to be presenting this study we did in Denmark in the first session, and it's based on case studies where we work with music therapists. But to get the context of the work that you'll see, we're going to present the bigger picture, if you like, up front, to show the work within the context, because from my side of things, and I would guess Eva's side of things, everything is connected. So it's like you see some of the presentation will be based on specific cases, but then other examples away from the music side with visual feedback, where we look at the different stimuli. Eva, can you go forward one slide? Yeah, I think. No? Sorry, we're Macintosh people. Right. Okay, so the bigger picture, basically, earlier in the week, yesterday, somebody presented about the band, and the band's work I find very, very interesting. The band was the choreography and rotational choreography, so the space, trying to look at that, and yet within the space is based on movement. So my work is very much about movement, simplistically looking at how technology within the interactive kinesphere, which is the space I reach here, the space I reach above, I move over here, and I take this space with me. And I think of that as the data space to work with and the program, and with the technology, get some different stimulus going to affect the person. So everything with my work is human-centered. Yeah. So basically, you've got the person, you've got the feed forward. So feed forward, I think about as if I move my hand in a space like this, that's creating some data within the kinesphere. That goes into the technology. We have some mapping that goes on to multimedia that feeds back to the person, and you have that causal feedback going on. We look at this in front of it, we look at flow, which I'm sure you're aware of. That's what we call static resonance. Also, because you've got the data going in here, you've got some ways to archive what's going on, to collect the data, to do some pattern recognitions and some logging from session to session, person to person. So basically, it's very simple. We're trying to close what's called the human after neural feedback loop. We're looking at the interface. There are many different things. We'll be showing you an interface and content. So that human data collection, the manipulation, to the content, to the presentation means we work very much across different mediums like VR these days, games, which we talk about this afternoon. But as I've spoken to Elena, I always tend to go back to the music side of things, because I think the qualities within the music are very, very interesting from all the things you can do with the different timers, you can do the different dynamics and what have you. Yeah. So what I'm interested in is when you look at perception, the cognitive side of things, is how can we perhaps decouple the cognitive element of it? I want to try and let's use this example again. I'm moving my arm with the data going into the system. But what I found within the research for many, many years is that when you can tailor the space to really fit the person, so you profile the person, do they like games, do they like music, do they like visuals, what is that thing that turns that person on? This data goes in to trigger that, and it affects the person. So the stimulus that comes into the person, he sends the signal to move the arm again, the cycle goes on. But over time, I believe that is the adaptation and the tailoring of the system at a level where the stimulus really is tailored to this person. The cognitive coupling, the feed forward to the hand movement, thinking of the hand movement, can be separated. So the feedback can go to the hand without the cognitive aspect being involved. When you look at rehabilitation from that, or helping someone with some movement side of things, often we found that the cognitive side can limit some of the movement. So by getting the stimulus to stimulate the person to move their hand relative to the stimulus, you can have interactions going on so the person can move their hand more than they otherwise would move it, because the cognitive is limiting that connection. Hopefully that makes sense. Yeah. So we're talking input sensors, and nowadays so many different sensors. We're looking at the experience that we're looking at. And we're looking at fun. We talked this morning, the keynote, we talked about play. Play is very much a key part, and that's Eva's side of things. When we start talking research, we get really bored, because that's what we talk about with questioning different elements. So it's very simplistic what I try and do. The system, like brain group, many years, is very fuzzy. Different sensors according to the person, content according to the person. And we try and target, please. We try and target something that really fits the person. So the system's called Soundscapes in the mid-90s, early 90s. So this is basically if you put a person in the space. Very often you have the facilitator involved in that space to make changes. The connection between the facilitator is very, very intense. Afterwards, people talk about what you can improve in the next session. The designer is involved to talk about how to make changes. So that's what is experienced by a person, for example, coming in a wheelchair, coming in with a quiet brain injury situation. We try and target a very minimal upfront, not the technology in your face type of environment. But please, behind all those other things going on, we talked about the different collection of the data which can be mapped to many, many different things. We talked about the different things we look at within the research, the affordances, the agency, the empowerment, the ludic engagement, the fun, the creative expression, which is the core aspect of the game, the motivation of the person. But basically, we question all of these under the hood attributes, if you like. And by doing all this, which isn't exposed to the person to work with, an immersion model was developed for Zoom, Zone of Optimized Motivation. And at the moment, we're trying to explore the AI side of that to try and improve some of the black box rehabilitation situations that we think are out there. Yeah, please. We click ahead. So this was an example of what we do with multimedia type of things. This was in Sweden around about mid-90s, working with three-dimensional volumetric infrared sensors, that's 1, 2, 3. The girl is lying on a vibration platform, so she's feeling vibrations through her body. She's also generating vibrations through her sensors, and she's triggering the different images of this. So she's being stimulated in many different ways. These are therapists and the parent. You know, GDPR, we've got to hide the faces these days, which is not ideal. And speakers for her an immediate feedback. So she's getting stimulated and then motivated to move in different ways. So this type of thing we would tailor it to different people. This friend of mine who got on with us, he would tell me the profiles of each of the children or the adults we were working with. He would often role play. He would come in and sit in the chair. If that's what we were targeting, put the sensors around him so that people wouldn't come in, get tired, fall asleep, whatever, because often that would happen as well. Please. So from the art side, this is from Porto Catholic Music there. They give the orchestra a rehearsal space. This was a suspended floor with the violins, etc., to feel the vibrations coming through the floor. So I would design this space and get the disabled people to come in. I'd go down there for 2 weeks. I'd build with the tech crew whatever I wanted to do. Big projection images, big speakers. Speakers are on the floor because the raised floor for the vibrations in different groups. They would tell me what different groups would come in. It could be blind, deaf, elderly with dementia. So the design had to encompass all of these elements that could stimulate them in some ways. And touch wood, it was pretty successful. The different capacities, and there's lots and lots of stories from it. I'll tell you a quick one. As much as Eve was with us, and there was this boy, 8 years of age, remember, who was deaf, and he came in with his mates, and the crew were with me because we've got to translate the Portuguese. And basically, he came in and he found a hot spot just about behind here, I guess it was. And what I mean by hotspot is where all the real heavy sensitive information is. So he hit the hotspot and he started shaking. And I shouted to him, everybody get down. So we all fell on the floor, hands on the floor like this. And this guy was like, it was absolutely magical. You had to be there, but it was one of these moments. Please. So what we do is we have people to interact with the space that we create. They can use some visuals. We published on it so you can have a read by the questions. Again, a similar thing, looking at gestural painting with the body, where we have a threshold programmed. So as the movement goes above a threshold, the person controls their own painting by stepping through a color chart. The color chart can be very big differences or very small differences. But the big thing about this was that they can control their painting with their own movement without the facilitator being involved. And this is what behind the scenes. You click again twice properly. This will be a video very quickly of the making of the algorithms. It's much back now. Video. Okay. Okay, it's a video, yeah.
So I click pictures.
Okay. It's over there too somewhere, yeah.
Did
Just
I
show
click
the video
on?
of it. Just wait.
Ah, here it goes.
Yeah. So this shows those of you who are used to this type of thing, talking about the difference, the whatever, the physical difference. So you're able to then basically the dynamics of the movement we were just really on track. And if I can just move it forward a bit so we get to this it'll move itself. Basically we would take this into environments that have types of ability or disability, and those who are stimulated, God has worked with the different learnings involved. Some people get really stimulated with this, and some people then be stimulated more with the visual side of things. In the moment you see a guy with learning disability, and what he was very big guy, very aware of his space in space in his brain that he took up. So I got to use shadow boxing, basically, I said to him, and you can see the type of pain involved with this. Later in the video, somebody who's profoundly disabled can't do much. You could fine-tune the environment then down to nuances of small movements. You can also work with someone like, with these environments, someone who's locked in, a locked-in person, can breathe, they can move their eyes, so you can take that as data, put that into this type of system, you get a different type of feedback for them. Let's move on. So this was the type of thing we did in casting music, as much as we would get them to paint, and you can see they're pretty blobby, the paintings. And we created an exhibition, so we put them up in the back, and as we said to them, you don't take the paintings home with you, but it was meant to be a tangible representation that they could come and collect 2 weeks after we finished this installation, and they would take them home, share it with their family and what have you. And again, there's lots of stories with this. I told one of the stories, the dementia patients, where the people who were running the workshop coming into us didn't realize the impact of creativity on the elderly people who were demented. I'll tell the story more afterwards. Another example of this, using different type of software. This was from, again, this is really early on, this is called Bliss software from the old Macintosh systems, but again, showing you the dynamics of movement relative to the feedback the person's getting. Yeah, move on. And then with the virtual environment we look very much like the user, we look at the interface, the model that you're mapping within, and the presentation. So nowadays there's so many sensors that you can put on the body, off the body, you can get data from all that you can map within the system, but also to look at what's going on and evaluate afterwards. Yeah. Different sensors are used. We work with linear sensors, planar sensors, or volumetric sensors. We look at what's happening on the body, but also the spaces around the body. We can also work with the data being in the space like this. So as you move your body, you're creating a change in the data that can be mapped again. So it's all very, very tailored. Yeah. And this was the types of sensors we made really early 90s, these are infrared sensors. You can map this to piano-based drums or red, blue, green for visuals. Yeah. But basically, looking at art, digital media, we can say we're looking at rehabilitation. We're looking at trying to make a society impact. We've got different stakeholders, we've got different audiences, different partners over the years, different days, art rehabilitation, after rehabilitation, did some movement with because movement of the buoyancy have to be moved. And root engagement, games, rehabilitation, we can speak about afterwards. And looking at this fluidity between these three. Click again. No, it'll work, I think. Yeah. Okay, you can do it. This is programming A to be dynamic. This is especially for David. Because the dynamic of you're going into the A space creates the dynamic of the volume of the drum sound. So very much to the dynamics of the visual, the dynamics of the sound. So let's exemplify that. This should be David. Yeah, please. So after this, the emerging model came with zone of optimized motivation. It's a synthesis of different theories, which is visual dynamic learning, microdevelopment, Chicken flow theory, shows inaction, on action, Vygotsky, and there's others. Looking at the methodology model, it's hermeneutic, so you have a whole and you split that whole into parts, each part becomes a whole, and you keep asking questions about each different element. It's based on action research, where each session you look at is pre-planning, design, action, observation, reflection, defining, and it has a cycle. So that goes on and on, based upon recursive reflection, where we look at what happens in one instance, next instance, and you reflect back each time on the previous instance or the prior instance before that. Now we're into this. So this is the electroorganic A-frame. Some of you came in and viewed. And this type of interface, I think, is quite interesting because it's not MIDI based, if you're into digital media. And when I first got hold of this, what I found was that different sounds make you interact with it in different ways. So the idea behind this, thank you, my friend, just an example for the sound to get an idea of it. The idea behind this is the interface can, because of the feedback and the content, can make you interact with the interface in many different ways. If you look at the profile of the person interacting within that space, you can fine-tune these different elements. This is more for the music side. I know there's a couple of music guys here. We're looking up at, this is just talking about what's going on with this. Already explained, you've got needed, decoupling, and then it's going to explain some of the primary aspects of this. We go through these quite quick as we want to get to this. Different ways of doing it. Yeah. Different, it's called adaptive timbre technology with a signal processing, yeah. And you're right, it's quite involved once you get into the brain of it, but it's so much fun to play. Yeah, please. You've got different filters there, you've got different spatial effects, yeah. You can pitch shift and tune with different aspects of it, but they're actually stopping making it. It's quite expensive. There's ATV is a Japanese company, and I can explain why they stopped making it. Please, yeah. And again, sorry, I just put these together for my own use, really. Yeah, you've got a three-dimensional spatialization space, yeah. And then what we did, so this brings Eva into it a bit more, is we took it into, we had an idea about using it within music therapy, and we want to work with music therapists. Would you like to explain this part?
The study we are doing now?
Well, this one into that, yeah. Okay, so we took it into the European Music Therapy Conference, set up an exhibition space, where we did new MIDI instruments as well as the electroorganic. Lots of people came down to try it, and were very positive in the first test of it, yeah. Then we took it out to the Science Day in Denmark and the Teacher Day. So lots of children got involved, parents with children involved, and interactions between them. Yeah. In this study, Eve's going to come on board now, but what we were looking at is very much the therapist, who you'll see, you can show faces. The therapist in this instance is here, and here, and here. And then the hands are two of the case studies we worked with and we reported in the paper.
Yeah, but so my inclusion is very much that we also not only look at the, we wanted to create that the participants got an embodied experience and that they over time could feel a sense of ownership and proudness of this. And in doing so, we can not only include the participant, it's important that we have a social and cultural perspective as well. So we worked with the two music therapists, and we brought those into our lab and have lent them to the therapists to have them over, they have had it
18 months.
18 months maybe now, yeah. So, and we gave, Tony introduced them to it so they could play around with it and use it to their own, with their clients, if we say so. And the therapists then have documented for us, they have made videos and they have then communicated what was to us, what happened in the videos. But there is, as we have talked a lot about in the other conference, Design, Learning, Innovation, is that as a therapist or as an educator, you are also a little bit afraid of the technology. So they also need to get their hands on it and training. So right now we are planning to have a couple of workshops with them. So they have tested it with their children or young people and given us feedback, and you can tell more about that. But so it's a work in progress, one would say, and the interface is not fully equivalent or delicate to fit to this the target group.
Like I said, it's very expensive. So when both the case studies were sat on wheelchairs, and this was in front of them, the therapist was really scared about physically pushing it off. And her reflection when she wrote to us was that it was during COVID, so she had time to sort of fit beauty with the interface, but I don't know if she was allowed to take it home. My reflection on it was that she didn't know the interface well enough. You really need to get a beauty with it and explore what your favorite presets, what would be the favorite presets of the person relative to how much they do. What we were seeing was that in the back here, there's a brain. Like I said, it isn't MIDI, but it's the brain back here, so you can step through. And she didn't know, she hadn't programmed any of her own presets, or perhaps it was my bad, I hadn't programmed any presets lined up for her. So she was coming away, and if you remember, I talked about when you're working with somebody in rehabilitation, you have an eye contact with them and a conduit where you have to get really intense, and there's trust, there's respect, where you're really sharing that moment. You break that when you go here, I change this, I change this. And in the videos, I was watching her break it all the time. And you can see it here. She's looking down, changing. And here, again, breaking that and losing that very, very important connection. It was
no, just that from my point of view, it's the challenge is really to find proper ways of analyzing and to understand what is going on. Therefore, the collaboration with the therapists, music therapists, are extremely important, but also the videos so that we can see the bodily expressions and so on. So all fit into both a quantitative but mostly a qualitative analysis from my side.
And she also said herself that she was too hurried to make something happen. She wouldn't sit there quietly and let the person explore and find it himself or herself. Let's get it going. You know? And she reflected herself, so she was critical of her own involvement from that perspective. And so where it is now, my old colleague works for the company, that's why I know they're not going to be what we were talking about was the problem of it. It's a big thing, it's expensive. We were talking about trying to make it smaller now. Can we put on like a magic arm? And nowadays you can take from the brain itself to have patch changes by foot, so the therapist can keep that eye contact going, change the patches. You could work with different pedals, you could do looping, you could do different effects, loads and loads of things. And nowadays you can just get a pedal into a computer and go from there. So there's different add-ons, like I say, you can do accompaniments, simple accompaniments, band in box type of thing, or work with digital like live, working with visuals, different things. And then new instruments, yeah. Why music, I touched on that after our talks about the different dynamics. And one of the things I want to bring into this, or we want to bring in, is more back to the overview. On the whole, I think when you work with people with different dysfunctions, different abilities, that really gives an opportunity for learning about senses, about what is possible, and possibly in your life, you've been in situations where you're more sensitive to music, more sensitive to some visuals, looking at different things. Perhaps you sat down in front of an art piece, felt something, but you don't know what you felt, but you've been impacted in a certain way. I think working with somebody with disabilities, I found that I question my own sensing of something towards then trying to explore that more. So I think Rodolfo talked about working with the blind. You talked about in your lab, Wolfgang, but you're someone with disabilities. And what I'm trying to explain here, if you work with someone with a blind, they train themselves to learn Braille. They're able to get that tactile feedback going, that haptic sense. And can we use that? Can we explore more sense of what we have in ourselves towards perhaps the art side of things and the game side of things, which we'll speak about this afternoon, I know Peter's here, to explore that side of things. I think that's about it. There's 3 books that I've been lead editor on about this technology for inclusive well-being. And I think the last slide is from the projects, from the conferences we've been working with, interactive game creation, design, learning, innovation, and there'll be another one of these now next year. And that's about it. Thank you so much for your attention. You have any questions? I'm not sure who's next. So it's the next person. Do you, Bruno, or Damien, or? Because I saw the list the other day. It seems to mix them up. Any questions, anyone? While we're trying to figure out who's next.
Would you expand the idea of adapted number? It
isn't my specialty, as I said. Going to integrate that. It's a commercial product. That information I had to give, you go to paper on it. So people with that side of it. I think what I understand from it is that Japanese engineers really went to town. It isn't sample-based triggering. It's a different way of processing the cube. And they do lots of filtering with it and lots of dirtiness that you would understand, way beyond me. But I definitely took in touch with Carl. And the guy who made that, it was the last instrument of the Japanese guy who did MIDI. He died a few years ago. He did that was a percussion. So it was made by his son, who I'm also in touch with, who's interested in the smaller instrument that he left ATV. So I can definitely be in touch if you're interested in the adaptive. Give a good timer. I will say it wrong anyway.
Cool. And the other dynamic tracking.
Oh, that's Max MSP. With Max MSP, I just had the space, messed around with the information. I thought, how can I make this more dynamic? So I can give you the patch one day and send it to you. It's just use the volumetric infrared sensor. It's on the skin of the sensor. As you hit that skin, which is very hard to do, trying to get that spot all the time, because you can try to put it dynamic before the spot or after the spot, and it was quite difficult, but interesting as well. And doing that, trying to make it dynamic enough to make it meaningful, really interesting. So that was your little gift, because I know you've got some from presentation afterwards. Do you have any more questions? No? Okay, thank you. Thank you, Ethan. Who's next, please? Let's. Online. Oh, do we have it online? I was just asking the session. If I get that, okay. Bruno, would you like to come on, you guys? You ready? We're ready, yeah, ready. Jason, Bruno, you up to them, I can do it. George, everything. Fine, pick this up here, right? That's water. Yeah.
So while Sadir just starts things, I'll do a short introduction. I'm Damian. I'm working at the Federal University of Acre and the Federal University of Paraíba, which are like 3,000 kilometers apart. And my home university is in the middle of the Amazon, so that's where I live. But this project in particular was done in collaboration. So if you look at the program, it's only my name there. That's wrong. Okay, it's a whole team that's working, and we are collaborating. I'm part of the team. It's in Menud. Sadir is coming from Menud, okay, and the other part is in Brazil, scattered. So it's scattered in Brazil. Okay. Okay. So we are talking about banging interaction in ubiquitous music. Ubiquitous music, very fast, is more or less trying to get people to make music through technology without having to learn music. Okay. And also giving people the opportunity to make music in other places that are not regularly used for music. Okay. One part of this work, Ubimus, is designing interaction, designing interfaces, designing ways to interact with sounds. And there is a whole bunch of other things that we do in Ubimus, mostly related to creativity, okay, to expanding our notions of creativity. So, one problem that we see in musical interaction is that most of the research starts from actually a given. Okay, we have this instrument, and then we try to figure out what to do with the instrument. Okay. The proposal that we are doing today, we're coming up with today, is that if all you have is a hammer, then everything looks like a nail. So how could we turn around that question, and rather than focusing on the device, the instrument, the thing, we start focusing on the outcome, okay, and what we want to do with our techniques. Okay. So we actually took up three lines of thought or methods. One is applying adaptive techniques, ways to deal with technology that are not fixed. Okay. Another one is dealing with mediator interaction, which Tony exemplified very nicely there, moving the bodies and all that, and also multimodal sensing. Okay, dealing with aspects of multimodality. And a very important aspect that we stress in Ubimus is not having a fixed aesthetic, not coming up with something that's only for one type of music, but something that could be applied to many ways of making music. Okay, so what we're going to show, Sadir and I, is an example of a prototype that we did back a few years ago, and which is mixed road, okay, for mobile devices, and an ongoing work that we're doing with Asirka, with Azima, with our other collaborators, which is called Dynamic Drum Collecting, which is basically a way of interacting with banging sounds, impact sounds. Okay. So, time tagging, okay? Time tagging, actually, it's kind of what we call creative action metaphors, which are metaphors that are not specific for interaction, but that are focused on creativity, okay? So, in time tagging, what we have is pool of sounds, several sounds happening. We have sonic cues that come from the environment. Okay, and we have the actions that I made on the interface, and we produce a sonic result that is a result of interaction of both things, the cues and the actions. Next. So this is an example of the interface that this second prototype did a series of developments with several prototypes, and eventually came out with this kind of striped concept in which you actually, what you have here is a kind of a unit, processing unit. Okay, So the user, I'll show the video. But basically, the user will put her finger on the stripe, and this will trigger several processes, and this can be done like simultaneously with several stripes, and this can roll. Okay, so it gives us kind of a range of possibilities for choosing sounds and choosing processes. Okay, so this is happening in real time. It's synchronous. Each stripe is independent. Okay, there is a rolling mechanism. Okay, and this was done when Android was still in its infancy, like at the beginning of Android. It was really hard to get it to go. Okay, next. All right, so we basically what we got is the local sonic cues serve as a scaffold, okay, for decision making, okay, and the mechanism is the stripe. So let's show the demo so that they get to know about it. Okay, this is the first prototype.
Anyway, it's fine.
That's okay.
That's okay.
We'll watch it.
No. Yes.
One minute,
Yeah. One minute and 7 seconds.
That's
No? Tricky.
No, it's frozen.
Yeah, what about that? Ah, it's frozen. Oh, okay. Okay, so basically what we did here is a study using this prototype. We used we use it in shopping malls. Okay, we use it also in the street. Okay, with people doing mixing in real time in the street. This is the first design. Pretty simple. Just getting the sound out of the system was already kind of a tricky thing, and then we improved it. The next iteration, we improved the design and came up with the stripe concept, which is here. So the user will actually select a bunch of sounds, and then these will be available. Okay, and as you can see, you can have several sounds simultaneously. And this is automatically mixed. It's seen as a mix. So the mix can include 10 several times. Okay, that's fine. So this stuff worked well, but it had the limitation that you need to actually touch the device. Now, what Tony was showing and what we can do with today's technology is work on proximity. So we could actually expand this same idea and apply it to dynamic usage of interaction, okay, and portal. All right, so now the second part. Maybe we play the video first and then. You want to start explaining?
Yeah. So for the second part, we have this dynamic drum, which is a kind of a post-estimation based drum tool where we play the drum machine and the drum machine moves along with you, but because it tracks you. So if we start from the very beginning, we started this research from last year, I guess, and yeah. So in the first thing, we had 3 prototypes of the drum machine. First initial phase, it was a very simple drum where the first prototype was very simple drum where we just put 2 images of instrument and we tried to play that. So but there were many problems with the drum. So we started working on the drum, and then we had this prototype 2, and we will discuss about the prototype 2. So basically, the drum had 4 individual instruments. One is the kick, snare, hi-hat, cymbal in the latest stage now, and it has the ability to take our body informations and play along with that. So if you go to the next slide, we can see this is the system architecture of the drum. So we have the laptop camera. The information is just it's from just a laptop camera, and then we have the post estimation algorithm running behind the deep learning model, which gives the information to the dynamic drum machine. The dynamic drum machine then tries to get the data and align or map the data according to the outputs, and also give a visual output and an audio feedback to the user so that he knows what is played. So the machine, this whole system can be run in any machine. Basically, you don't need a GPU, it runs on the CPU. So anybody can run just a laptop camera. So it's very simple to learn. And we have some DAW running behind for the sounds. We can also use samples if you want, but sample takes time in trading. So we use the DAW, which is very fast because of the latency problem. So everything happens in real time. For getting 2 information, one is the note information and the velocity, that how hard the drummer hits it. So we had this cue replacement technique where we store the information of few frames of the motion, or where the value is calculated by the difference between 2 frames, 2 video frames, and the more the displacement, that means we have a better velocity or more velocity. So in this way, we calculated the velocity of how hard the person hits the drum, and then we have the index finger as the triggering point. Whenever the index finger reaches the point or inside the drum region, it triggers the sound, and the MIDI parameter is used for triggering. So in the prototype, we tried to understand the whole system using a drummer. So there was a guy who was a professional drummer. We told him to explore the drum without giving any information to him. So the first session was a exploration session where he was trying to figure out what the drum was like, because we didn't give any idea about what is the special. We said that the drum is just like so he invested some time to figure it out, and after some time he started learning it, and maybe 10-15 minutes he was kind of he figured out own ways of improvising music and stuff. Then we give him the later challenges to play a simple beat, like just tap 2 hands in a rhythm, and he was able to do that. And next we gave him some harder tasks to play some complex pattern in this type of drum, and we tried to measure the tempo or the velocity or the tempo or the speed at which he was trying to play. So we figured out that there was some there are some velocity, like the tempo like 60 to 125 was achievable. Beyond that, it was not possible because of the latency problem, the processing time for for the deep learning network, because it's running on CPU, as well as the haptic feedback between the camera and the player. So on the third prototype, what we did was we had a couple of non-musician participants participating in the experiment, and then we tried them to play an advanced version of the drum, which was more stable, much better, with 4 different instruments like the hi-hat, kick, cymbal, and snare. So, and also we told them to play with their friends together. So we had a server client architecture in that, and they were collaborating and playing with each other. We also saw that there are many kind of latency problems because there is a network involved where the 2 drums or two people were playing. There was kind of processing time of the algorithms depending on different laptops. But more or less they were efficient enough, and they were able to produce a rhythm between both of them. We will see that in the demo. And the last thing was really interesting at the last talk, that the people we suddenly told them, just close your eyes and play. Okay, they were more comfortable to close their eyes and play rather than looking at them, getting the visual feedback, because they can figure it out, where is the position. But when they were looking at the camera, it was taking some time. It was, they're not, because they are not musicians, can't handle the brain, can't handle that kind of latency. So yeah, it was a good observation. And then we have this demo. Just so over here, he doesn't have any body landmark, so he doesn't know that what is going on, how it is tracking. He doesn't have any idea. And the 2 side boxes were the thing by which he can put the drum kit in any positions. So over here now he has some idea that how things are working. In this one, he can position the drum machine according to his wish and play. So it can be played by anyone, by any part of the world. And this is the way it moves along with my body. Whenever I move. Also see this if I come closer or go far away. So this was the non-musicians try to play this drum. Okay, and the rest part, I think Damon will explain for the next.
Can you? Yeah. Okay, so these 2 examples point to the possibility of a more general paradigm for interacting with impact sounds. Okay, so the idea we came up is calling this banking interaction paradigm, in which we have a moment of preparation, which includes several operations and several issues. The moment of motion tracking, in which the system actually is detecting the motion of the hand or the motion of the body, and the moment of collision, in which actually it serves to start renderization process, in which we will have some synthesis or some processing or some simple playback if the hardware doesn't let you do more than that. So this will be sort of the general notion. So in particularly, we will be talking about 3 stages: preparation, motion tracking, and event visualization. Okay, which will include setup, installation, configuration, and motion tracking acquisition through platform-specific solutions, and then renderization will include synthesis, processing, or playback, depending on the case. And next, and the difference in this approach, in targeting specifically impact sounds and dealing with interaction from a specific class of sounds, is that we are putting timbre at the center of the the proposal, and we are forgetting about what device, what instrument, whatever, how you do it. Okay, we come up with the idea that actually Tamara will go first. Okay, this approach supports simple sonic rendering, like playback or something, but also it could include complex processes of things up to certain limits. And there is also the issue of the synchronous visual feedback, which Fadila was talking about, which may be necessary at some stages, but not necessarily in a way that we understand music making us chamber music, okay? Everybody playing at the same time simultaneously. That's not what we are proposing, okay? So last one. Specific ideas that we take from this project. Consistent cross-model interaction mechanisms, okay, that we need to keep. We constrain the choices to a specific timbre class, in this case, banging or impact sounds, okay, and implies a change of perspective. We start from the sounds, and then we go back to the interaction mechanisms, rather than the opposite way, okay? So, first use your name, then find a hammer. So, these are some of the publications that we did, particularly I refer to this book here, and there is another one that came up last year, okay, Routledge, and if you want more information. So that's it. Thanks.
Any questions for Damon? And if Duarte is online or if he's here, please let us know. We can do by the chat, the streaming text, so we know. Any questions for Damien? Okay, you've got them, Damien. Yeah, both of you, sorry. Okay, Bruno. Well, Bruno said, and I just want to say this has been a really nice session for me. I had a present for Bruno the other day, and then a present for David. Been very nice, day and a half so far. I really enjoyed the questions. It's been very nice to engage. It's been very nice. Thank you so much, everyone. No, sorry. No news from Dwayne. Chuck. No. The right leads here. Português.
Eu já estou a partilhar. Tá. O que é que eu...
Não, é o outro. Tenho que partilhar no final. Vamos fazer o... Ver as várias versões das telas. Faça o final.
Bruno's a man after my own heart, Macintosh. Ooh, that used to bring up some comments.
Quando final, CV. Quando chega aqui,
eu agora deixo que não.
Então, eu vejo o produto final, põe o nome do produto final. É aqui que faz aqui. Faz o botar. Agora aqui. Só aqui. Não, agora faz. Não, o som está a sair bem. É assim. Não, certo. Este aqui é o.
Não, este não é meu.
Ah, não é assim. Não é este.
You need a pause music. You need to pump up to. I ask you a question. It's been on my mind these 2 days. You expressed it a couple of times that there is a reluctance in some people to experiment or assess new technologies, for example, the grounded. I'm curious about the psychology, the mechanisms around that. Do you think that there's a difference when we approach somebody with our exciting technology and they were not? I mean, I guess my question is, would it be easy if they came to us asking for you?
My experience is from the 90s, basically. I used to go to places with my tests, and they were dead scared of technology taking their job. They were dead scared of the understanding, because in those days, people, can I say, they were mature ladies who played but with settlers. They were that scared of some of the technologies. From those times, and these music therapists up to date, 25 years later, they were still scared of it. They got it in their hands and they explored it. They didn't get dirty with it. I think their training perhaps could incorporate more technologies. They really engage in skills physical therapy. But for what I know, I don't think they really get dirty with it. They have time to explore that they probably do more for their kids interacting with them. So whether it could be them coming to us, that would be great, I think. I looked at Lisbon one time and talk there, and talking with the young guy there, after 25 minutes, he got straight away. He really grabbed it. So I think maybe it's a generation thing. Otherwise, I really hope that. Whereby, by giving the talks, by showing what maybe some people want to grab it.
Thank you. Good afternoon. So the following presentation is about a second level circular algorithm to visualize and support collaboration in science. So the presentation is divided in 5 main points: introduction, circular layouts, a scenario, the design and implementation in future work. Okay, so finding accurate results in the, I don't know why it's showing, okay. Finding accurate results in the actual digital science or information deluge, is a big challenge and has never been more current than now. This challenge imposes a shift from the actual researchers' approaches that are based on search engines mechanisms defined by advanced search strategies to a solution based on a visual language that supports and portrays science cooperation. I will talk about this context later more later in this presentation. So I use this image, the Trinity College Library, as a metaphor of the context that established the foundations of the specific problematic. So in this sense, it is necessary to briefly explain a problem that emerged from the relation between the researcher and the science digital libraries. When we stand before a large amount of papers and according to our particular subject, it is frequent we came across with a vast list of results. So 3 million articles are published annually, totaling 8,219 new research papers are published every day. Numbers from the 2018 STM report. So the question is how we find the most important papers according to a specific research topic. So the filtering of relevant information is becoming a fundamental challenge in the actual information overload context. So in science digital libraries, a visual strategy to support the research process is lacking, which underlines the importance to design effective and efficiently solutions that simplify the systems we use. We can see in these two examples a very common way of presenting search results throughout an extensive result list. However, despite the use of advanced filtering mechanisms and research strategies, it is very time consuming. And also getting accurate results is a big challenge. So, information visualizations and data schools. Currently, and through the use of new technologies, it is possible to explore the actual information landscape with more resolution. We can compare our current capacity to understand and visualize large data sets with the 17th century astronomy evolution accomplished by Galileo and the sunspots observation, as you can see in this image. So in the past, researchers didn't have powerful tools to capture the different layers of our complex, dynamic, and multi-dimensional world. So drawing was the primary medium to communicate observations, ideas, and conceptual theories. One example among others is this diagram of Florence Nightingale, the Nightingale Rose. So circular layouts. So just to explain, so hierarchies and networks are the basic structure of information. So the tension between these two distinct concepts, which complements each other, defines the architecture of the evolution of biological and cultural information systems. So in every network, there is an hierarchy, and in every hierarchy, there is a network. It turns out that there are a lot of real-world phenomena and objects that can be described using a network. So I will talk here about networks, and especially the fixed layout, but I will also give an overview of force direct layouts. So typically, we have three main categories of fixed layouts, okay? The first one is the circular layout, where the nodes are just arranged around the circle and they are equidistant. The second one is the one where the nodes are arranged along a line. The third one is the fixed 2D layout, where the nodes are arranged in a grid or variants of a grid. So what is a fixed layout? So, well, very simply, a fixed layout is a layout in which the position of the nodes is fixed from the very beginning according to some criteria. So now, when is a fixed layout more appropriate than a force direct layout? I will show later what is a force direct layout. Why should I use a fixed layout if I have a nice force direct layout available? I think there are a number of reasons, but above all, first of all, the most important one is that you have to keep in mind that what a force direct layout achieves is to show the topological structure of the network, where structure meaning a lot of things, but typically is whether nodes tend to be grouped together and then show connections between these groupings. So, but what is really important to keep in mind, okay, is is to understand what is a network. So what are some advantages of the fixed layout? So the first one is visibility. Typically, since you can arrange the nodes in a very specific location, you don't have this skewed distribution of nodes where you have lots of nodes clumped together in one region. Some are sparse, some are clumped together in another region. They typically are positioned in very specific locations, and they are equidistant, so you have more leeway to arrange the nodes in a way that you have more visibility. Okay? Let me show an example. So this is a forced direct layout with few nodes, with few data, and then converted it to a radial layout. So I think one of the things that you can notice in the circular layout is that it's much harder to identify the structure, but it's also much easier to identify, say, large or small nodes, or even better nodes that are connected to lots of other nodes or connected to only a few nodes. So these are pieces of information that is much, much easier to identify. There is another big advantage of fixed layouts. So the advantage is that since the layout is fixed, you can split the different regions of the layout into different categories. And because of that, as a consequence, as a byproduct of this choice, you can see relationships not only between the nodes, but also between the categories in which these nodes are grouped, which is very, very nice property of fixed layouts. So here's an example with a circular layout. If I can categorize all the nodes into 4 classes, in this case A, B, C, D, and high, I can see relationships not only between the nodes, but also between the classes. Here's a nice example. So very briefly, talking about related work, we have this particular technique that is called edge bundling technique. You may have noticed that in previous slide, the last image is shown as a circular graph layout, okay, where the edges or the lines were not straight. They had curves. The technique used here, that there is exactly this one that is called edge bundling technique. It is a very interesting technique. So the idea is that when we have too many lines and these lines are crossing and creating a lot of clutter, we can reduce the clutter and hopefully facilitate the perception of the direction of these lines by bundling them together. So one problem that may happen with this technique is that if the lines that follow similar path exactly through the same path, they may be occluded. Okay, so an additional interesting technique that has been added in the method is the idea of adding different factors to group together or disentangle lines that pass through similar positions, and this is what we see exactly here. So if you are curious about how actually one can use this technique for the original visualization that I have shown to you, so there is a more specific, here is a more specific example. On the left, you see similar radial chart where the lines are drawn just straight between the points. As you can see, there is a structure. You always need structure in order to create edge bundling. And there is just one single point in the middle of the circle and the elements that are grouped. Okay, so there is another question in here because so these concepts or these visualizations are data driven, you know, so the data has to have a structure in order to visualize. So in this case, this visualization used a hierarchical data set. So in my approach, I'm applying this with a relational data set. So just to follow the future use scenario, so can you share any papers about fMRI studies? We see a lot of these questions in the Twitter, okay, and Facebook. So the goal is to map and support and visualize this behavior, which can find in social networks or simply in our daily lives. So, but in this particular case, we turn to the same problematic that is a Google Doc with a reference list. Moreover, we consider this process as an inaccurate way of doing. So this is the result. And also it's interesting because it's a collaborative process where researchers or peers are helping each other finding the most important and relevant articles, you know. Another tweet So I just want to say that the research process is also a social process where researchers are willing to help each other, okay? So another example is from Cesar Hidalgo. To my academic colleagues, when you post about your new paper, tell us what the paper is about. Just sharing paper accepted is bad communication. So this is on Facebook. So this post points out the need to improve the communication process. So this context implies perceiving science as a social space where researchers and their reading experience could play a fundamental role. I see researchers as curators, so the question is how we provide a tool or interface for researchers to share their curated papers. So we have a lot of them in our personal computer. So how can we shape and support science social dynamic? So conceptualizing and designing a two-level circular algorithm. So as an exploratory data scope. So this slide shows the future exploratory data scope or interface where the two-level circular layout will be implemented to support science collaboration. So also very briefly, in order to distribute the nodes, I have to use trigonometry. So polar vs Cartesian coordinates. Okay, so I won't go into much details, you can read it in paper, but a basic understanding of trigonometry is essential, if you want to calculate an angle, figure out the distance between points, work with circles, arcs, or lines. The trigonometric function allows us to establish a relationship between the components of a vector and its direction plus magnitude. Okay, so I have here the formulas, and if you want to check it, then you can read the paper. Okay, so I use the formula to convert from degrees to radians, as you can see, and also to convert polar coordinates to Cartesian. Anytime we display shape, we have to specify a pixel location, a set of x and y coordinates. So another useful coordinate system known as polar coordinates describe a point in space as an angle of rotation around the origin and the radius from the origin. Okay. So let me show you some results with the interaction. So I use the dummy data set. It's not a real data set. I fabricated the data set in order to work with this kind of network with two levels, you know. So because in the first approach, we're trying to catch data from Twitter and Facebook, but now they are closing the system and the API of Twitter is very limited, only to 7 days. So in order to implement this algorithm, I have to fabricate the data, okay? So I'm using a data set. You can check it in the paper. I have the link to the visualization, and also you can use the data set. It's a JSON file organized according to a specific structure, namely a relational data set. So as future work, it's important to emphasize the use of a non-hierarchical edging bundling technique to reduce visual clutter. However, further researcher directions are needed regarding this point in order to try to mitigate internal clutter when using a large number of links. So another point is that the animation is used to metaphorically present flows. However, the flows at this time do not represent any variables, so further research directions are also needed regarding this topic. So, thank you.
Some questions? I have a question. Ask it.
Of course.
Thank you so much. Thanks. It might not make sense. It's great that Monica Wolfgang again, because I know the net funnel, net collector. I remember that was with the people putting their arts online and sharing information for researchers and everything. One of the things that I've been thinking about, because when I'm doing my stuff, I find it sharing is something I'm really keen on, more sharing of the potentials of something or someone, and for someone to use it. So a music therapist like Lena who's here now talk to another music therapist. Oh, we tried this, yeah, but that didn't work. Yeah, it really good. And then worldwide, not just in the West, but Indian, Chinese, and I'm really into that for the future. Whether that well, and then games. Why should a game work with someone? Why should an aspect of a game help somebody in a certain way? The nodes that this isn't my field, but could this type of networking and of the nodes, sharing of information, like if you don't know,
I know it.
You know
very well the work of it.
That's good. So could this be something to share universally towards helping people or whatever is the answer?
I think so because, well, I have different concerns because I'm working from a design perspective in order to facilitate user interface methodologies and user experience methodologies. I also have to try performing usability tests. I'm not concerned with a more aesthetic approach, but I think the goal is to assemble this in a platform and people starting to share their curated papers in order to help other researchers, you know. So we have a lot of platforms and it's accessible to worldwide. So
this question that Peter asked me just now about technology, and I was thinking about that after I'd stopped answering of this to show people what's possible. And one of the things I was talking to Elena about was this designers working with therapists, or we head towards this transdisciplinary, multidisciplinary, cross-disciplinary, interdisciplinary. So, but you find people as designers, or people are therapists. So the working together of the people to get these platforms as a subject of that collective working seems to be missing in some sense, where everybody are keeping their thing to themselves.
Yes.
Because of this commercial down world that we're in with power of greed. But that's my own bias, I guess. I see lots of potentials from this and from what was presented in the first keynote of the collection of the art. But like I said, I think everything's connected very much. And I think when I talk about games this afternoon, I link that to my art. And I can see this being very important towards this sharing of information. Otherwise, how the hell do you know what is a good paper rather than just the title being a good title? Anyway, that's what we'll kind of, I guess. Any questions at all for Bruno? Yes, please.
I think it's a very interesting work. This actually very much reminds me of one of my colleagues' work. They're actually into disease pathways and its relationship with the protein. So your application is on social networks, but I very much see a very striking similarity to how they map the graph from this social interaction with disease pathways. Because what my colleagues have been struggling with is the visualization part. With a lot of nodes and a lot of edges, things tend to become very messy and things tend to become difficult to load in a very quick manner. So they have a hard time to visualize the different pathways. So I think it's very interesting that this could be applied. This could be applied also to other fields such as genetics and biology.
Thank you. So in the outside, we have the researchers. In the inside, we have the papers organized according to a ranking that I fabricated, So because for instance, the most important papers shared by one specific communities. It could be media arts community, humanities community. So the goal is to implement this in a platform in order to people share. But you know, we are using algorithms to making this and rankings. But why people read? We read the papers, you know. We keep it in our computer. And if a beginner researcher speaks with me and asks, "Oh, Bruno, can you tell me what the best papers or best literature to read in this specific topic?" Oh, I give to them. I give to them my books, my papers, everything. I share to them. I share with them. Sorry. So that's the main concept of this work. But I will quit.
But isn't there a limit then of what you've been exposed to? You know, because there's so much out there.
Yes, yes.
My limit is what I've been exposed to, and someone like you turned me on to something. Where's that been in my life? So that exposure must be, can this overcome some of that? Because, you know, the title can be good, but the paper could be shit. Or vice versa, whatever, you know. So the categorizing must be very complex to get this paper is good according to the need of the paper being good.
Yes, it's very difficult.
Thank you so much.
Okay,
please come grab Bruno for a chat about this afterwards. I can't see you. Thanks, Bruno. I can't seem to get in touch with the good gentleman here couldn't get in touch with the paper that seems to be missing. So if you're online, please send to us. Sorry, send a chat and say you're there, and then we can get you lined up. But otherwise, I think we're going to move forward. And this afternoon, then we have the panel. I think is with Air and Alexandro. And do you want to say anything about that page? Because you're down here representing quite a few people.
Sure, thank you. Yes, this is a hard act to follow, but we will do our best. I'm busy downloading Andrew's video. It's a challenge unto itself. The limits of technology. My USB stick is from 2007, okay, so it's not in line with the times. But we will talk about different aspects of games, and we'll touch upon many of the topics that have been discussed over these 2 days. But I hope that we can also bring some fresh perspectives. Not sure what the others will talk about, but I will talk about. I'm not an academic, so I will not be presenting a research paper. I will talk about 2 trends that I think are the most powerful trends in games today. And one is the democratization of game development tools in terms of accessibility, price, etc., marketing. And the other trend is the rise in popularity of player-created content. And I think it's fair to say that we can see a scenario with these 2 merge, which can make a very interesting combination with some new phenomena that we haven't seen before. So that's my little teaser for my talk this afternoon.
Great, thanks, Ben. I think it's the first time it's been done. The initiative started 6 months ago, I think. And then certain people were invited into it. It's split the industry. We've got 3 of us who are here who's going to talk, but also work 5 online coming in. So hopefully, fingers crossed for a good discussion and to get some interest going of this from the outside, from the design movement. But otherwise, thanks so much for this morning. See you back here for whatever time it is. With the headphones.